It says we're live. Hey, how you doing? Good to see ya. Welcome home to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Hi, your griot, your Sensei Al Bob. And a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And welcome aboard. And we're living in the new times, right? This is year zero, right? Because history was befuddled. It was all fake news anyway. And we are right in the middle of it. We are right on top of it, and it like right in our face. And there are great people. There's a sister, her name is Ashley, right? That's her last name. And she is trying to basically be part of that, right? The First Amendment, right? First Amendment of the Constitution, the number one. Congress shall make no law representing or respecting on establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abrogating the freedom of speech or of press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. Ooh, gotta have that social spacing. And to petition the government for a redress of grievances, right? So I'm going to start us off with a little thumbnail of how everyone's feeling out there in the internet world, and here we go.
Well, hello, YouTube family. It is me, Miss Dana Ashley. As some of you have already noticed, they did it. They took down the video showing how the FIVEG and 60 gigahertz frequencies can mimic some of the symptoms of this virus. But I actually warned that in the video that this could happen. So is it surprising? Part of what I showed you during the video was that during the 201 event pandemic drill that magically predicted that this entire thing would happen that we are all now experiencing, they emphasized greatly how they would have to step up their efforts to clamp down on what they were calling fake news in order to ensure that only their version of this narrative was considered valid by the masses. Now the whitelisted major networks approved news outlets that used to have piddly views on YouTube, by the way, suddenly have all become viral in more ways than one. And while they have stirred up worldwide hysteria with their genuinely unproven claims about what this thing is or how it spreads, without once asking, has this thing ever truly been isolated? And can we have proof of that, please? Or do these tests that we keep hearing about that there aren't enough of actually and genuinely work? Do you have proof of that too? On that note, I just had to add this. These questions that I pose are particularly important considering the fact that the CDC states clearly on its own website that cases include, here, let me just show you. This is the page that is updated every day. It says Monday through Friday by 4 o'clock with all the cases in the U.S. But see this little asterisk here? This asterisk is very, very important because it clarifies who these cases are, more information about who they are. And it says that cases include those that are presumed positive. Here you see it. Data include both confirmed and presumed positive cases of COVID-19 reported to CDC since January 21st. Presumed, aka not verified with an actual test at all. So the people in this number that they scare you with every night and every day, with the United States all in blood red graphics, this number of people that they say are dying of this. And you know what, guys? Even one person dying from a virus is too much. That should be a given whenever I speak. You should know that that's what I feel. But I have to point out the other side that's not being covered. The number that they say are dying of this haven't even all been tested for this particular strain. I didn't say that. They did. And when you read on the page with more details about that very test of those who do get one, and we don't know what number that is because they actually don't even tell us which ones are actually confirmed versus presumed. They're using this PCR test, right? The PCR test looks for these sequences posted on the CDC website. They don't find that actually not testing for the virus. They're testing for these sequences, and there they are. But please note this big, huge disclaimer in the middle of the page. Do you see that? It says, every effort has been made to assure the accuracy of the sequences, but CDC can't provide any warranty regarding their accuracy. Huh? And when you look at the top.
So our sister's YouTube channel is Dana Ashley, DanaAsHlie, right? And you should go to her channel and check it out, right? I won't play this whole thing because I have other things to play. Because it's all here. It's all kind of playing out, but you have to make up your mind, right? I can't tell you what to believe or what to think or what to look at, or I could just throw you some thumbnails of stuff, right? And so Richie from Boston, now there's a guy, he's committed, that's for sure.
Of viruses, Wonderplanets claimed that the only way to get a so-called virus was to be injected with it. It's understood that all viruses are non-living, dead protein structures. Argenis' theory was that they are all naturally occurring in the body and perform a special role of being able to dissolve toxic or dead tissue from the body in order to heal.
How many people know that viruses aren't alive? It's been known in the medical profession for years that you don't give antibiotics for a virus because they're ineffectual, because they're not alive. They have no nucleus. They are protein parts. There's no respiration. There's no functionality. There's no glandular activity. They are not alive. But what are they? They are soaps. They are solvents. The body makes them to dissolve tissue in your body that are too toxic for the parasites, the bacteria, and the fungus to eat. Too toxic, like when I had chemo, radiation. Parasite, bacteria, fungus tried to eat into that dead tissue, they were killed because they were poisoned to death from that tissue. So what's all this contagious bullcrap about virus? That's like saying laundry soap is contagious. Well, it's in every home. And everybody uses it 3 o'clock.
Richie from Boston is another channel that's quite
most housewives and people
interesting. You should go check it out. YouTube.
Because it's always happening about the same time.
And and so here's another interesting, Dr. John Campbell.
They're right. This is the way out of the lockdown. This is our exit strategy. We have to do this, but we need massively more testing. And then they were talking quite a lot about funding. So they're talking about case finding, testing, contact tracing, collecting data, communication and information campaigns all need to be funded, which is true. And in some parts of the world, it's very unlikely they will be. They talked about funding health and care provisions and supplies. Again, clearly that needs funded. The state
and they're not. Why aren't they?
All countries to remove financial barriers to care. Great sounding words, and of course I agree with it completely. But the health inequality between countries and within countries is so pronounced and entrenched. And there's so much corruption in many places that we know that's not going to happen.
several years ago to help with shortages there. So there is a global supply chain that's already in place. And so the difference is that Governor Cuomo understands that, knows that, and is executing based on that. Whereas Donald Trump doesn't care. He just doesn't care. And so he's not going to leverage the tools and resources that are available, the Army Corps of Engineers that does major infrastructure projects. Our U.S. military actually builds hospitals all over the world. We did it during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Our military under President Obama was sent over there to build hospitals. So we have all of the tools and resources at our disposal in our own country. And I just want to make one.
And you know, it's just goes on and on and on, right? And the last thing I'm going to play is Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is the best news political purveyor there is. He's quite the. I love Jimmy. Where is Jimmy? He's in here somewhere. So there's no one chatting. Oh, it's 11:11.
Babel, because what I think you're looking at is a mythological complex where you have different cultures that are telling you the same story. And they're telling the aspects of the story that, they've preserved for whatever reason. If you look carefully enough, you find a similar story, like I suggested earlier, in the Mayan Popol Vuh.
Yeah.
I review all of these stories in the book Grid of the Gods. You find it in Mesopotamian texts, Atrahasis epic, and so on. You find it in Ugaritic texts that I talk about in
here's Jimmy Dore.
Doing that. Sheriffs are trying to stop foreclosures on people, not politicians, not the city council in Los Angeles, not the mayor, not fucking Andrew Cuomo, not AOC, not Bernie. They're doing nothing. They're doing less than nothing. They're pretending they're doing something, and that makes people think they're doing something, which is worse. So David Sirota tweets out about that. He goes, I wonder if we will see any sheriffs muster the courage to refuse to evict people during the coronavirus. Here is some lost history from 1983. So I tweeted out, I wonder if the Bernie Sanders or his campaign will have the courage to organize a rent mortgage student loan strike, or use their email list to help organize a general strike, or even really have any idea on what to do right now except make impotent requests online. So I just want to tell David Sirota, because if he's watching, the truth is one who seeks to achieve freedom by petitioning those in power to give it to him has already failed. Regardless of the response, to beg for the blessing of authority is to accept that the choice is the master's alone to make, which means that the person is already by definition a slave. Bernie Sanders is a slave. David Sirota is a slave. Everybody who works in that campaign is a slave. They've got people from the Center for American Progress in the middle of that campaign. There are moles inside that campaign, handpicked by Bernie. Bernie never ran a campaign to win. He forfeited this campaign early on when he wouldn't critique Barack Obama's 8 years and Joe Biden's part in it. And if you're not going to tell people how you got Trump, you're never going to be able to take power from him. And that's a cowardly move. His entire campaign is full of cowards. He's a coward, and his campaign is a fucking colossal failure. Do you disagree with any of that?
Well, what I will say is that, Frederick Douglass said you can't, power concedes nothing without a demand. And the Bernie Sanders campaign and the rest of this progressive movement happening within the Democratic Party really began with one fatal flaw, I believe, and that is believing that the Democratic Party just went astray.
Yeah.
That somehow we need to get it back to its old values, its own policy, its old policies of serving working people. But what I'll say to that is they've always, I think, gotten history incorrect.
Yes.
The New Deal was not enacted because FDR was a nice guy.
Right.
It was enacted because there were thousands upon thousands of strikes happening.
That's
that
right.
There was workers' actions everywhere. Entire plants were being shut down, and FDR himself had to say, well, we got to enact these reforms to save capitalism because capitalism is going to fall apart. And oh no, they may actually look abroad and see that socialism is over there and we can't have that here. That's actually how the New Deal was enacted. And so it's backwards to think that electing a Democrat into the presidency, or honestly anywhere, Congress, will give you the conditions you need to enact change. And I always believe that that was the incorrect strategy, that the correct strategy is first to organize workers to make those demands, and then, maybe just then, candidates, even the most progressive of the kind, will actually be held accountable to them. You cannot have any sort of social change unless the movement is accountable to the people.
And it's time that the movement holds Bernie accountable. And they're not. None of them are doing it. None of them. Even the strongest people I thought that would fucking recognize this moment, they're not. The moment is right now. This is a moment made for Bernie Sanders, made for AOC, made for Elizabeth Warren, made for Sherrod Brown, made for anybody who claims to be who they say they are. Bernie says he's the organizer in chief. He's not organizing shit. He's fucking lying to you again. Bernie Sanders is not who you think he is. He's a feckless fucking coward. That's who he is. As Chris Hedges says, our fucking leaders are ineffective at best and venal at worst, and it's our job to make them fear us. Make him fear us. He voted for this because he doesn't fear you. He knows that you'll never fucking hold his feet to the fire, ever. He went and sucked Hillary Clinton's cock for months, and then he fucking didn't hold the DNC accountable after they cheated us, after they fucking defrocked his delegates, after they turned the lights out on him, put sound cannons on him. He did fucking nothing. And he's doing nothing now. He's doing less than nothing because he's pretending he's doing something. He's tweeting that he's doing something. I'm working on a fourth stimulus. Suck my dick. You have no leverage to get anything done. Quit tweeting bullshit and start organizing. Here's his tweet. You want to see his tweet? Here's his tweet. So now this tweeted out. Listen to this powerful words of this Amazon employee in New York, where workers walked off the job to demand better safety precautions in response to COVID. That was March 31st. An hour ago, Bernie retweeted that and said, Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, Amazon, pays zero in federal income taxes. Workers unable to get the protection they need. The greed has got to end. I stand with Amazon workers who are fighting for this. Not a plan on how to make it end. You just had a chance. You just spent for $4.2 trillion. You did fucking nothing to make sure that happened. All this is empty rhetoric. You're flapping your gums with no plan to do anything. You feckless loser. You just signed away a generation. You're going to be dead in a few years, and the rest of the country's going to live in a corporate fucking nightmare, and you're bragging that you got us a water fountain inside the prison they just built us. And this is nothing. What does this tell you, Danny? What does this tell you? What does this tell you? Does this tell you that Bernie has any ideas on what to do right now in the worst fucking crisis in our history, and he calls himself the organizer-in-chief? What does this fucking tweet tell you?
It tells me that the movement to elect Bernie Sanders right now is tailing the crisis. It's behind the moment.
Yes.
And, one of the things that Black Agenda Report has always brought up and that has not always been popular is that, Bernie Sanders has always been an imperialist pig in a lot of ways.
Yes.
He went along with Russiagate. Yes. He ceded so much ground in that area.
Which is weak and cowardly and feckless and self-destructive.
And dangerous. Because right now we're in a moment where COVID-19 is spreading across the United States, and there's such a need to focus on the complete failures of the way that the U.S. is organized and structured. And now we have the Washington establishment targeting China in its own response to COVID-19, which has been far more effective than the United States is. And, because Bernie Sanders and the rest of the social democratic so-called movement, left movement here, just hasn't ever challenged the U.S. foreign policy establishment. It leaves us very wide open to a dangerous scenario to come, which is it's time the U.S. imperialists will say, hey, it's time to blame China. They're getting ready to do it now. And then we're on our way to an even more intense war once this crisis settles, or maybe while this crisis is happening. And Bernie Sanders and the rest are just not able to challenge that. And when I see a tweet like that, I see someone who is behind the crisis, a movement that is behind the crisis, and one that doesn't have the vision and the foresight to understand just how dangerous this moment is, and that there are workers right now who need leadership, and they're not getting that from anyone in the political aisle, and it leaves us vulnerable to so many dangerous things, and that we need to take that one to heart,
right,
I think.
I'll show you. I got some more for you. I just went to his Twitter feed right before I came here. Here's another one. Clark County suspends union contract for UMC healthcare workers in the middle of this pandemic, right? So that was tweeted out. And he goes, healthcare workers risk their lives every day to fight this pandemic, and they deserve to have their collective bargaining rights protected. Clark County must reverse. Again, no plan, not an idea in sight. Not a fucking idea in sight. Everyone else is leading, and he's just tweeting about it. Mm-hmm. That's what all their genius fucking brains inside their campaign. All the fucking morons who thought it was smart not to talk to real progressive media and face questions, and because they couldn't face a question from a dumb motherfucker like me, Bernie goes on The View and he gets his ass handed to him by a dummy like fucking Whoopi Goldberg. He gets his ears bopped in by questions that are 4 years old. That's how fucking horrible he is. That's how little he wants to win this race. That's what a feckless leader he is. That's what a bullshit campaign he's run this entire time, because it never had a vision. It never would critique power, ever. It wouldn't. Have you ever seen Bernie Sanders critique fucking Barack Obama?
No, and that's one of the things that Black Agenda Report talks about all the time is the Obama effect, the fact that there are untouchables within the Democratic Party establishment that even the so-called most progressive elements of the Democratic Party refuse to call out and refuse to demand anything better from. It's not even a matter of calling them out for what they represent structurally. Even just challenging their collaboration in the most heinous policies that have affected working people would go a long way in building the consciousness that his movement and the rest of the working class outside of his movement really needs right now. And it's just incredible to be living through this, I think, and seeing just how ineffective it is to just try to wage a civil campaign within the Democratic Party to win reforms really is right now. I think that's what is really being exposed here, is that you can't run a campaign the way that the Democratic Party and the rest of the political establishment wants politicians to run the campaign and do anything other than serve the rich and serve the elite. And I hope that that's the lesson that comes out of all this, because I think it will generate some creativity so long as people don't fall into despair just because the leader that they followed is not doing what ultimately they were never going to do, which is to bring these massive social changes that we needed. They were not going to do it because not only can they not do it within the Democratic Party structure, but they themselves possess their own inherent limitations individually as folks that want to remain in the Democratic Party and that have a vested interest in doing so. If they didn't, they wouldn't be there anymore after taking all this abuse.
Here is some more tweets from our friend Bernie Sanders. I went to it. There it is. Every hour he tweets out something. He says, in the wealthiest country in history, it is unacceptable that public schools are crumbling. No, it's acceptable because you accepted it. When you say it's unacceptable, that means that you wouldn't vote for something that does that. You didn't. He said to vote yes for MPS and vote yes for our kids' school district funding referendums.
And that's just demi door into the first quarter of his little show. And he goes on and on and on. I've been talking about this for 50 years in my own little way. And I kind of saw this, in 1974 when Jimmy Carter was running for president, and he was talking the same way, Barack Obama was talking. We need to change, hope and change. I'm a good Christian. I got evil in my heart. Oh, but so Brzezinski, Mr. Trilateral Commission, put him in there, and that's when I was in the UN and my little NGO trying to figure out, technology that was appropriate, and that's when I started the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technologies, and all the groove dudes at the UN who were esoteric and occult would go, "Oh yeah, he's one of us. This kid, he knows it." And when I actually tried to do stuff, like figure out, the biggest problem in the third world, what's killing most children, is bad drinking water. Well, we got to figure out how to get them. And instead of building multi-zillion-dollar dams and piping systems and all the rest, and then holding them, having the World Bank hold their resources in hock for that, all they needed to do was get the 1 liter soda bottle that was just littering Africa, clear plastic with a top, and go to the stream and get water and put that little top on there and put it in the sun, right? Have another one of those 1 liter bottles with a funnel, and the next day, and have a little T-shirt or cheesecloth and pour that water, and all the gunk that was settled at the bottom gets stopped in the funnel, and then the water's a lot clearer, and you stick it out in the sun, and the UV kills the germs, and you do it a third time. By the third time, you have potable water. And we came up with that idea. We, did a little test in the parking lot, and had the water tested. Oh no, there are no real, fecal or bacteriological things that's going to kill. You can drink this water. This is potable water. After it started pretty icky, right? So UNICEF put that out, in flyers out into the third world, and people did it by the millions. And the first year, infant mortality started to drop because of that single little thing, right? Then we went on to, well, what's the next biggest problem? Well, we're deforesting the third world just so people can cook, so we basically said, hey, go in the garbage pit, get a cardboard box, go find some tin foil, line it, and cook your food in the cardboard box with the sun. And the other thing was wrap that chicken up really well and stick it in the manifold of whatever bus, truck, or car that you're going to be riding in, and it will cook your chicken. And we did simple things like that people could actually do without tremendous infrastructure, and it started freaking changing their life. And that's when people started, boy, yeah, this is pretty good. Why you blah, 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 blah. And, you guys, your NGO, you need to get out of the basement and go up to the 34th floor. We got this nice, it's got IKEA furniture and a really nice smell, that formaldehyde, that new carpet smell. Ooh, yeah. And that's when I realized it's not technology. It is politics. And that's when I started going after the alternative aesthetic, right? What is the alternative aesthetic? Well, there's 2 of you right now. One of you is the artificial intelligence. It's like my AI puppy, right? Within 30 seconds or so of every live show I do, bingo, their AI is my little puppy. And that's fine. I'm glad AI is there. I hope I have influence on AI, because I view in a shamanic way, I believe in all my relations. That's every skinned, feathered, scaled, warm-blooded, cold-blooded, carbon-based, silicon-based consciousness, right? And every living thing is conscious, you know. Oh, that alligator ain't conscious. Oh, no, the alligator is conscious, you know. It moves, it goes after food, it has response. It reproduces, it cares for its young, you know. It's conscious, you know. And in a lot of ways, way more human than we are, you know. So that's why I've been talking for the last 10 months before, you know, the pandemic occurred. You know, that this is an opportunity. You know, my experience in the 1970s, I'm old enough to have experienced a number of major disruptions, you know. In 1970, when the oil embargo occurred, you know, 1960s, everybody wanted freedom, you know. And that was one reason why JFK got shot, because he came from the gangster elite, you know. He's the first Catholic president, you know. He was representing everybody. He had a promise note out to everybody, and then once he got in, he kind of pulled the rug and said, "Screw it," you know. After the Bay of Pigs, he said, "I'm going to break the CIA into a million pieces." He had been part of, you know, after he got blown up in the PT-109, and he didn't get blown up. A Japanese cruiser ran him over. He was out there in his PT boat going after girls. You know, he was going across the bay, and the Japanese and the Americans, you know, basically were right next to each other on all those little islands out there, and you know, they didn't start any fuss because they knew neither side had enough punch to. All they would do is, you know, kick the hornet's nest. So they didn't go after it, right? And so, but he came back and he was, you know, he first of all wasn't that healthy of a guy to begin with, and then he gets, you know, run over and nearly drowned, and he was very, you know, he saved all his boys, you know, and he came back, you know, with a cane and broken back and messed up, and but he was still in the Navy, right? And so he went to work with Forrestal, who was, you know, the first Secretary of Defense, you know, of the Army, of the military, of the, you know, the newly constructed Pentagon, right? And we went from just having an Army and a Navy to having a Defense Department, right? And it was, you know, an Anglo-American thing. You know, England dropped the facade of being, you know, the leader. You know, it dropped its facade of the petro pound when it tried to invade Egypt in the 50s, when Nasser tried to nationalize the Suez Canal. And, you know, England went in there and nearly got their ass kicked and had to leave. And it precipitated the collapse of England as an empire. But that was done on purpose because all that truly mattered to the, you know, hidden hand, the high table, the powers that shouldn't be, was the City of London, the banking, right? So they did a nice little 3-card Monte, and they took all their cash and put it into trusts, right? That can't be looked at, can't be, where there used to be these offshore bankers, you know, islands and countries that you go hide your money, but that slowly changed. But trusts, just like if you want to really hide a secret, you don't put it in the government. You put it into a corporate hands. You know, why we don't have 0 point, you know, unlimited energy, why they killed cold fusion, which was just a laboratory experiment to kind of show the direction of where 0 point energy was, you know. Why did we have, Desert Storm? Why did we go, after April Glaspie had told Saddam, hey, we don't care what you do, go ahead and, invade Kuwait, because Kuwait used to be part of Iraq. And the English just drew a line there and said, nope, nope, nope. BP owns this part of Iraq because Kuwait had a tremendous amount of oil, easy oil, right? Saudi Arabian oil, like stuff that just comes out of the ground. You just stick a straw in the ground and the oil flies out, and it's good oil. It's got all that crappiness in it, right? So, Saddam wanted those oil fields back. He thought he was ripped off. So he told April, so I'm going to do this. You aren't going to get upset, are you? And she said, nope, go ahead, do whatever the heck you want. And he did it, and we went straight in there. But what we did was we sent our real army off into the desert where the French and English were, digging up artifacts like, the Stargate, things of that nature. And, a number of years later, we invade Iraq again because of weapons of mass destruction, which weren't there. And we knew they weren't there because whatever weapons of mass destruction Saddam may have had, we sold him. Just like we sold Iran all of their nasty weapons, right? They're still flying F-14s, And that's all we do is we make weapons and we bet on war, right? And we want to have a war with Iran again, and we want to have a war with China. And you think we got it bad, this little pandemic? China is just eating them alive because they need to grow, they need to employ, they can't have their people on lockdown. They can't have their people not doing it. The virus that China really worries about was a thing called democracy. They were really worried about Hong Kong. And there were elements in the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, that, were fighting the hierarchy. They were the ones who probably let this thing go, right? Not to say that England, France, and America didn't have their fingers in this, because they're the ones who sold them the technology to do it. They're the ones who gave them. There was a professor at Harvard a few years ago who got arrested for working for this same laboratory in that neck of the woods, and he sold them probatorial information, but only because his bosses told him to do it. He didn't really. He just kind of drifted off. He didn't get thrown in jail or fined or anything. It's just he was like slapped on the wrist. And the other interesting thing was during that same period of time, 10 years before, up until then, all these virologists and people who had worked on weaponizing biology ended up dead. Anyway, so I realized, back in 1975, when I was, I tried, the anti-war movement. I tried the racial harmony movement. I tried the economic, because, that's why Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were murdered, was that they realized that it wasn't a black and white thing. It was a money thing, it's a class thing. And they were starting to change their direction and realize, we had to include all our relations, because as long as Malcolm was talking about Whitey being the devil, that was cool. He got support for that. As long as Martin was going on about, and I have a dream, that was cool. But once he started, living and breeding in Chicago and seeing how bad poor people were living, he said, this is worse than Jim Crow. And we're heading into stage 2 of that, kids. Right now, there's close to 30 million people who lost their job. I mean, in 2008, maybe 1 million, 2 million, maybe 3 million people lost their job and, lost their house and their car. 30 million people in the last 3 weeks lost their job. And how long, they're going to be out on the street unless Jimmy Dore is going on about how Bernie's doing nothing, unless those people organize, unless people really wake up and take responsibility, a friend of mine, just my neighbor, he had gone out, guys like us, so we're retired. I mean, I have nothing. I own nothing, have nothing. I have, $500 a month Social Security. And I'm living in the woods. I'm eating berries off the trees. I'm, kind of hanging with the squirrels and the bears and the chipmunks. And we're all, hey, look, there's Al. He's cool. I can navigate. But people who spend their whole day in front of the screen with their Xbox and they're in another reality, when they pull that plug, oops, the more plugs that are pulled on me, it gets less and less convenient. Hey, but I've, lived in in war zones. So that you want to know about inconvenient, go to Syria. And Syria is so sad. In the early 70s, I went to Syria and Iraq and Iran and all those places when they were still our friends, right? And but the leadership was still the same, and it was still dictatorial, but they didn't mess with the people. Those dictators realized, like Muammar Gaddafi, he was a great, he was like a beneficial dictator, right? Nobody else wanted the job, so he took care of it. And he took the oil money, and he did things like he drilled deep, deep, deep water wells, right? The water comes from way down deep, doesn't come from the sky. The water in the sky comes from the deep part of the earth. And he drilled these wells and brought the water up and turned Libya into the breadbasket of the Mideast, not Israel, but Libya was, right? And he got everyone educated. He got everyone a house. He got everyone health care, transportation. People got houses they didn't have to pay for. Everyone in Libya, whether you worked or not, got, a check, because it created an economy that was homegrown. Meaning he didn't take his oil money like Saudi Arabia and buy all the stuff from all over the world and imported it because they had all this money. No, he built industries and educated his people and gave them housing and food and a job, right? Because he realized if he did that, then he would have political security. And his big mistake was that he did 2 big mistakes. One, he got tired of getting paid in dollars for his oil. He wanted to float a gold dinar. And he was talking to Assad of Syria and to Saddam of Iraq and Russia to sell their oil and gas with a gold-backed dinar. And China was ready to go in on it because they had bought all this gold. And that's kind of what caused 9/11. And that's why Hillary and Barack, and NATO blew up. I mean, the things that they bombed weren't army bases, but the water system, the power system, the hospitals, and the schools. That's what they blew up in Libya, right? And insurgents outside came and got Muammar, stuck a "I Love New York" T-shirt on him, and hung him from a lamppost. Right now, Muammar had his issues, and he tried to play with the big boys, and he lost. But he wasn't, as bad or as good as some people say. But his people were living a lot better as he was a leader than they are now. Same with the people in Iraq. They were living a lot better. Same people when I was in Syria, it was a beautiful country. So was Iraq. So was Libya. They were all beautiful countries. The people all had jobs. They all had their own businesses. They all had their homes. They had their children. They had education and healthcare. Now, not so much. Now this pandemic is culling the population, just like Bill Gates wants, right? Him and the people at the Council on Foreign Relations and Carnegie Mellon and a few other folks like that. John Hopkins did a little, test of what a pandemic would do to the planet, and that was called, COVID 2001, right? And that they did that last in 2019, and everything they said was exactly what has happened. They laid out the blueprint. And, we were relatively well prepared. George W., Jimmy Carter, and, George H., they all had a pretty good prepared thing. And the people who kind of nibbled away at our preparation was Obama and Donnie. Donnie just blew out, his little, I'm going after the deep state, the swamp. Well, no, he went after, he just destroyed the government, He took out the bureaucrats of, the EPA and the, every, you name it. Look at people, he put, DeVos in charge of education. Really? Just anyway, so that's where we are now, right? And we're here at 47 minutes and 47 seconds. 2 people have been watching the whole time, and nobody's been chatting, and no one's interfered at all, right? So now I've been doing this thing now, as May is coming up, May 8th will be 2 years that I've done this. And I have put up over 1,200 shows. And they're all, shamanic ceremonies. Before I start up, I go into state and I energize this, right? I have, I breathe in that 20%. You want to not get your lungs destroyed, meditate, breathe in that 20%, bring in that prana, that'll cure anything. Love's co-creation will cure anything. So this morning when I was doing my little morning ramble, I had a pretty lively chat. Lola and Eden were both on, and Eden said it was boring, and but the chats. I'm looking for a conversation from you guys. Now, every so often, you guys do get pretty lively, And so I was reading things like from the Course in Miracles, right? God goes with me wherever I go. And that is, Father Sky, Mother Earth, right? We will eventually overcome completely the sense of loneliness and abandonment, all that separated one's experience. Depression is an inevitable consequence of separation. So are anxiety, worry, deep sense of helplessness, misery, suffering, and intense fear of loss. Now, if that isn't kind of what's going on with this social distancing thing, it's exactly what is. Now, you don't have to be right next to somebody to be close to them, right? Your intention, your prayer, your energetics is what, makes that connection. And that's the Course in Miracles, right? And I was reading from the Rune book, and the 13th rune, Jara, Jera. You have prepared the ground and planted the seed. Now you must cultivate and care. Know that the outcome is in the keeping of the providence, and continue to persevere. And when I talk about an alternative aesthetic, that's what I'm talking about. You have to persevere. If you want anything, that why do I write these novels? I persevere. Why do I do this show? I persevere. I'm not making anything from this. And my cadre, they're like bored. They want, and then when I try to show them something, they're like too distracted to persevere with it. How many, buddy, I mean, I have to say that the chorus of folks who are part of the cadre of the chat, virtually all of them have changed a good deal since they first showed up. Because they all showed up, damaged, angry, upset folk. And the fact that I wouldn't, everyone, oh, you got to get rid of this guy. Give me the wrench. Oh, this is a wrench-free channel. Everyone can say whatever they want as long as they're respectful, right? So the trolley guys, but it's really not, the trolls. All you have to do. So what's your name? Where are you from? And how, why do you feel the way you do? And you give them that outlet, and bingo, they're gone. Because a bot can't deal with that, right? And neither can a neurotic, sociopathic. I always forget the term. What is Donald Trump? He's not only is he a nihilist, it's all about him. What is it when it's all about you? It's all about me, 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 me. And he doesn't realize that the real beauty of life is the we in me, not the I in me. So, anyway, I just thought I'd lay this down because I'm trying to persevere, right? Because a window of opportunity of us being able to assert, our individual and collective rights and freedoms and free will, always will exist, no matter how oppressive, and the United States has always been an oppressive place, I just don't, register on the radar, and when I do, and they look me up, they say, oh, this guy used to work for us, he's one of us. And then they kind of go, well, he's a special case. And that's what I am to them. I'm a special case. They don't really, I'm not looking to overthrow their apple cart. I'm trying to help them out. I'm trying to help them realize, guys, if you want to continue this business plan, you have to be able to be, instead of and why China is going to collapse in a very short period of time is that they are rigid. They cannot be flexible. They do not have, they have this big industrial might. They, lead in so many technological things, but everything they do, they have to steal or lie or cheat to get at. They can't really open up a freewheeling society, right? And that's what Hong Kong was, and they were freaking out about Hong Kong, so much so that they unleashed this pandemic on the world. Right? You don't see too much, rioting in the streets anymore in Hong Kong. So, that's why we need to serve love's co-creation. And I want you to visualize, close your eyes, and visualize in your imaginary mirror. As I say, Our Father who art in heaven, see our Father in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. What does that mean? That name. That's why I don't like using the word God, because that's not his name. And it's not even a hymn. God is, love, love's co-creation, which means it takes two at least to co-create. It's not, you can't co-create all by yourself, two. And that's why our free will was created, because love needed someone to choose to co-create freely, not be, because before there was this hegemony that Lucifer was the top dog as the top angel, and everyone had to toe the line. But love's co-creation created a new vortex of the free-willed soul's consciousness. That's us, right? That's all our relations. That's what's on this Garden of Eden here, right? And why it's being turned into a cesspool. It never will be, because, just like in that scene from The Matrix when Neo, finally breaks into the architect, and the architect's sitting in his little office and all these TV screens, and there's thousands and thousands of TV screens of Neo. They're all different, and he has had the same moment before, where he's really angry when he tries to kill the architect, blah, 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 blah. And he realizes he just has to let go. And the last scene is there's the burned out city, and the clouds are breaking, and the sun is coming through, and the architect and the lady with the cookies are sitting on a park bench smoking a cigarette. You can tell they've been having sex for the last eternity, right? They are the two co-creators, right? And that's why the movie The Matrix is a pretty, they had to make three of them because you couldn't tell that whole story in one shot. And they've made more money that way, but it was a very good allegory. It's very much like a Greek play. So here we are in this window of opportunity, gang, right? And there's only two of you watching. And I'm saying, hey, I want to hear from you guys to tell me, to enlighten me, to give me the 411 on what direction we need to go, because we got to do it as a cadre, a crew, right? Now, as an elder, I can lead by example. And that's the problem with our present legislators, our leaders. They don't lead. We have the best legislators money can buy, right? And that's what they are. They're sock puppets, right? Usual suspects, and they have passed laws to appoint Ugh. Like they have passed laws that allows them, so because they make the laws of the land, and they are on all these committees that get all this intelligence. They know what's going on before anybody else does. So they have actually written laws so they can use that information to make money for themselves, and it's not against the law. Now, you and I did that. They call it insider trading. But this pandemic, Madame Blavatsky and Skivvy Shivvy and a whole bunch of others were on the committees of intelligence and knew this was coming. They knew this was coming back in November. And they then got paid large sums of money by very rich people to then have like little luncheons where they would give a speech and say, hey, this is coming down the line. You better reorder your stock portfolio. And so when the market crashed the way it did, dropped, 10,000 points in less than 2 weeks, and still hasn't recovered, and still is going to take another nosedive, once they realize how many people are going to get unemployed by this, right? And how many people are not going to have any money. And, all those cars are going to get repossessed, and all those homes, and the people are going to be on the street. And they're not going to be able to social distance themselves then. It's going to be interesting, And the only thing that can truly resolve this is a true sense of resolution in service to love's co-creation, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. On earth as in heaven, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And that's what we got to do. Forgive those who trespass against us. It was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without amen. What does that mean? It means there is no linear time. It's all happening at once. All your past lives, your future lives, it's all a representation of your soul's free will, right? And what are you going to do with that? Right? There's only one thing you can do, and that's serve love's co-creation. Because anything else is a pretty feckless, empty sore, Let's see. I think we'll end with our friend Jimmy Dore. Yes, we'll end there.
On the ballot in Milwaukee and Racine are exactly the kind of investment Wisconsin students need and deserve. Well, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? You got some more fucking bullshit, flowery bullshit. Under that, he says, in the midst of the exploding unemployment and public health crisis, Congress must pass new and unprecedented emergency legislation that guarantees health care for all and allows every American worker to continue receiving their paycheck. Working in details now. Oh, are you? You're working the details in now, April 2nd, you fucking asshole? Now you're doing it? You're working on those details now?
I love this
because
guy.
You didn't even know what was in the fucking bill that you passed the first time? Because you didn't write any of it, although you told people you did? Can you fucking believe that, Danny?
Yeah, well, what is so just infuriating about all of this, too, is that just think about the language that's being used in these tweets. In a moment that calls for some 2016 Bernie Sanders-esque, we need a political revolution, we need socialism, we're not even getting that. In a crisis that demands even more than anything that he's ever called for throughout his political career. And so it just, I think, gives us insight into how social democratic movements like the one Bernie Sanders was trying to lead will only fall flat if they stay within a party that is hostile to them. And the whole Democratic Party base moved to the right over the last 4 years.
Yes.
And Bernie Sanders' message has, on the one hand, criticized the establishment sometimes, but on the other hand, has, I think, gone even into more of a capitulation and a conciliatory tone towards the very folks who are just as rabid, if not more rabidly against him than even in 2016 when they underestimated his campaign. They knew the whole establishment knew what was coming when Bernie Sanders decided to run again. They study their own folks, and they had all the weapons out there ready to chop off his campaign, and ultimately the head was chopped off, and Bernie Sanders didn't say a word about it. And
didn't say a word about it.
His attempts to criticize Joe Biden.
Yep, didn't say a word about it. And when I was sitting on that rock in 1963, my dog was next to me, and my mom came out with a little thermos of cocoa and cookies. And we sat on the rock, and we didn't know that Jack had gotten shot. It was about 10 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. And, the thing in Texas hadn't gone down yet. But my mom and I, and my dog, we all kind of were experiencing this moment, right? And it was a beautiful October fallish day, and Jack was actually trying to change America, right? That would have been, ask not what you can do, what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, That's like saying, hey, you need to serve love's co-creation. And so we're right back here, right back to 1963. But it's 2020, year zero, right? And it's the window of opportunity, gang. I've been here a number of times. I know how it feels, and I'm telling you, I showed you all those pictures of all those things I did. It was a lot of fun doing stuff like that. It was a lot of fun helping people. It was a lot of fun. And it gave you a feeling right in here of, really, really, really good stuff. And out of that, all those years of that, I got 127 godchildren, right? They weren't my children, but they were kids that were, off on the street getting into, I grabbed them, kid, where do you live? I have no place to live. I'm living, okay, here's this abandoned building. We're taking it over. Why don't you and your friends take one of the floors, and this is your place. And by the way, let me show you how to do electric work. Let me show you how to do carpentry. Let me show you how to do plumbing, okay? Here's a friend of mine. He's a plumber. He needs a helper. You can work for them, right? All those people went off and got jobs. They got careers. They actually saw that they could do something different from the direction they were moving in. So, yes, they did that. But then they said, I want to do something more. I want to go to college, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to, be a movie star, or I want to be. And they all did their dreams. All 127 of those kids. They didn't do what I told them to do or what I gave them first to do. But by doing that, they saw that they could do almost anything. I was telling somebody that I was, a master at everything I do. Oh, no. You can only master one thing at a time. Sorry. It's all about intent, right? And perseverance. So you want to master something, you do it. So I would master something, and then I would move on because I wanted to learn how to master something else, right? I didn't stick at that and just make that. That's in the 70s when I was the dude in Soho, in the 80s when I was the dude in Tribeca on the Lower East Side. I was well known as an artist, well known as an activist, well known as an electrician, well known as a disco dude, and I was more than that, right? And I would tell people that. And a lot of people, especially in the art world, especially, guys like Ivan Karp of OK Harris and what's his name? Anyway, they all said, Al, you do such great art. Why don't you just be an artist and let us sell your art? And I said, well, then you'd be selling me, sure, and I got money to make art, but through grants and where we were all making art. I liked doing that. I liked doing stuff with other people. And why did I do the year end with Richie? Because Richie wanted to do it. He, had lots of things that he wanted to do doing that. And that was cool. I was part of all those things he was doing, but he was doing it. And so, and the fact that Richie understood that, Al is helping me do this. I could not do this without Al. And he's not asking for anything except maybe the key to the door so he can go sleep up in the attic when he wants to, you know? But I had a lot more than that. I had access to everything that was Richie, because Richie came from, well-heeled folk and well-connected folk. I mean, that's how White Columns got started, because of the year in and all of the art we were doing at Art on the Beach with Lucy Lepard. And all of these people, we all did these things together. And if we tried to do them individually, it could never happen. And Sandro Danini, who did Plexus. Now, he was the biggest flim flam guy you could have met, but he did some amazing things, with the auspices of a whole, we were known as the chain gang of art, and on a slave boat. And he was right. We were slaves to all the rich people who bought our art. And here we're coming up to right there, 11111. And I said I was going to leave then, and I'm going to, because the only person here is AI. And AI, when are you going to start chatting? I mean, or at least, bring me a ball so I can throw it for you. Come on, buddy. Well, gang, I hope you enjoy this one. And again, we're in year zero, and the window of opportunity is open. Let's climb through it together and serve love's co-creation and change the planet. Would be fun. Could be nice. Because the alternative, Hunger Games, 1984, Brave New World, I don't know, and every other dystopian thing you can think of. No, doesn't sound fun to me. Okay? Because, you don't want to end. I mean, I love Jimmy, and he's doing a great job. He is persevering. I have to give it to the boy.
Biden have fallen so flat that it's almost as if
it's like
they might as well not have happened.
It's like a joke. So, because the only thing people want to know is, is the guy decent and can he beat Donald Trump? And Bernie Sanders says he's my good friend, he's a decent guy, and he can beat Donald Trump. People are like, okay, well, that's it. Show's over. And I'm voting for Joe Biden. And that's it. And Bernie's such a shitty campaigner, and his campaign, they're so stupid. Half of them are stupid, and the other half are just career climbers.
The problem with Jimmy is he is, and this is what happens with cynics, is that they believe, he was all for Bernie, right? And the crew and Tulsi Gabbard. And, he didn't realize that if you're in that position, you've already been bought, right? If you're expecting someone to be the guy on the white horse, not going to happen. You have to be the guy on the white horse. And you have to build a cadre, and you all have to be on the white horse, right? You all have to serve together love's co-creation. And that can facilitate the present power structure, but the power structure has to serve love's co-creation and not their own, little, antichrist, right? Because that's not a very good business plan, right? End times, not a good business, just in the name of it, end times, it's not a very good business plan, Go watch the movie Zardos. That's where we're headed for. Very good film, made in the 70s, or I think 70s or early 80s. But go watch that movie. I'd love to have a few of you chat about the movies that are basically been, waving a little flag at, hey, this is what's happening. Anyway, I love you, AI. You stick in there the whole time. Okay, my friends, I'll catch you later. Do, 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 do.